Guys, the more I get into fragrances, the more I experience them, the more I, experience all the different notes in fragrances, I start enjoying floral fragrances even more. It wasn't like that when I first started. When I was first getting into this, I couldn't even stand the idea of floral fragrances, but I really love them now. And since we are deep in spring, I thought it's a great idea to do a spring floral fragrance video. And I've got 12 fragrances here that I'm going to talk to you about. Some new ones and definitely the usual suspects that I talk about. So if you're interested in finding out about spring floral fragrances that are perfect to wear now, then please stay tuned. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Sebastian. Yes, I do enjoy floral fragrances. At one time I didn't. At one time I was mostly wearing men's fragrances. Then it went into unisex. I don't mind wearing floral fragrances now. They're really beautiful. Some of them can smell fantastic. I really like the way they smell. And it's a nice contrast to stuff that's really intense and heavy. Floral fragrances do have a freshness about them, and these fragrances, some are more substantial than others, but perfect spring floral fragrances. So if you're a man, let me know, do you enjoy floral fragrances? If you're a man and you don't enjoy floral fragrances, why don't you enjoy them? Do let me know. And also ladies, I know some ladies do enjoy more masculine fragrances than others. So if you're a woman, do you have a favorite floral fragrance, or do you enjoy them? And if you don't enjoy them, why don't you enjoy them? Put a comment down so I can find out. Let's get started with a few new ones that I wanted to highlight here. We're going to a house called ORENS Parfums. I have highlighted and done a video with the Dahlia several years ago with 4 of their initial fragrances, but I just discovered this new one called CALLIS Subtle or Subtile from ORENS Parfums, and it's really delicious. When I first smelled this one, I got some fruitiness in there, and I don't know what is creating the fruitiness, but there's no fruity notes in here. But the more I started wearing it, it's more about the flowers, and some of the flowers kind of tricking my nose to smell like fruits. But it's an overdose of white flowers along with floral notes, so they're not really highlighting what kind of flowers there are here. They're letting us know we've got white flowers, which I do get, and we've got other floral notes in here. So could be yellow flowers, could be rose. I don't get like a true standout rose note in here, but it's a fantastic smelling fragrance, and I think it's perfect for spring and also perfect for summertime as well. In addition to the floral notes, we've got sugar, amber, moss, and musk. It's very sexy, and I absolutely really love it, and I think this is going to shine in the heat really well, and it also has a great trail. Now, some of you might think this might remind you a bit of Baccarat Rouge 540. Yes, there is something in there. I think it's the moss and the musk note that's in here that might come off a bit like Baccarat Rouge 540, but man, when you first spray it and all those floral notes in here, it's super fantastic. So this is CALLIS Subtile from the house of ORENS Parfums, the first fragrance I'm gonna talk to you about or let you know about. Moving on to the house of NUIT NOMADE, one of my favorite fragrances there is JARDIN de Misfa, but they have a really beautiful lilac fragrance now. It's lilac with acacia, which is basically mimosa. This is Love at First Sight, really a spring in a bottle fragrance, totally. I absolutely love lilacs. Lilacs are some of my favorite flowers. In fact, I missed lilacs this year because I was traveling. But whenever they put them out here for like 1 to 2 weeks, I buy it as much as I can so I can have them in a vase and smell them, because they smell super fantastic. Here, it's not only lilacs, which are spring flowers, you also got acacia flower or mimosa flower. They both grow on trees, long, big trees, and the flowers are on there. So both of these flowers full bloom in the bottle with a bit of fruitiness from the passion fruit, and then of course the muskiness from Ambroxan. But man, this is delicious. Really great, perfect spring floral fragrance, and I think it's a great time of the year to wear now to smell like those spring flowers that are in bloom. So Love at First Sight from the house of NUIT NOMADE, wonderful fragrance. Then we're moving to the house of Les Jardins Retrouve, and this is Osmanthus YUAN, another new one from this house. I would say this is probably substantial for a floral fragrance and also leathery. So Osmanthus is a flower that smells of fruitiness. There's peachy, apricot-y touches here. And with this flower, you also get a leathery undertone. So here, with this fragrance, they're highlighting the Osmanthus along with peach and apricots, and then also leather. So you get in addition to the leatheriness and the peachy apricot-y stone fruit touches from the flower, you know, they've added those notes as well to accentuate and make them more intense. So it's got a leathery backbone, so you got to be into leather to wear this. So I'm just warning you. So if you don't like leather, or you don't like these kind of flowers that go fruity, then definitely not for you. But along with those notes, you've got jasmine, you've got iris, so it becomes powdery. There's some citrusy touches. There's mandarin in here. There's musk, blackcurrant, and green leaves. It's a different take on a floral fragrance. Of course, the Osmanthus note does have fruitiness. It's a very unique flower. It's a love it or hate it, you know, flower for me. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. Here I like it because, you know, it accentuates the leatheriness. So Osmanthus YUAN is from the house of Les Jardins Retrouve. So let me know if you know those houses and if you've sampled those fragrances. And so far, if you like them, the idea of them, let me know if you would like to check them out. Put a comment down below. Moving on to one of my all-time favorite floral fragrances. This is from the house of VILHELM Parfumerie. It's a Lilac a Day. This one right here. This stuff is super fantastic. Now, it's, you know, I also like Lilac Love from Amouage, but I'm not featuring it here because it's more of a substantial fragrance, very heavy. It's more like a gourmand. Here we've got a very fresh green take on lilacs. They have lots of lilac here. It's imagine smelling that lilac flower bush, or, you know, the flower on the twigs and the branches and things like that. And that smell captured in a bottle here perfectly. But they've thrown in other notes in here. They've got Freesia, jasmine, and then you've got that greenness, bitterness from Galbanum. There's some amber here and some rose as well to round out to create a wonderful, wonderful spring fragrance. If you're into the idea of lilac, you gotta get this and check it out. It's one of the best lilac fragrances ever, I think. But more fresh, like I said, Lilac Love is one of my favorite fragrances from Amouage, but it's definitely more depth, it's more gourmand. Here, definitely very spring-like. Lilac a Day from the house of VILHELM Parfumerie. Definitely highlight of that house. I really love it. You should definitely check that one out. And then moving on to my second favorite fragrance from Thomas de Monaco, it's COUER, this one right here. It's a beautiful, beautiful fragrance where they've taken some of the notes in raw gold and added this beautiful fresh magnolia note in it with some pink pepper and ambroxan. Along with that, they have rose and tonka beans as well, and it creates a really, really beautiful fragrance. Really wonderful, very fresh, but with depth, you know. It's the magnolia. The magnolia flower is definitely got this creaminess, definitely white flower, but it has a lemony undertone. So it's not necessarily uber floral smelling when you compare it to something like gardenia or jasmine or tuberose, but definitely it's flowers. But it definitely, for me, it has that kind of lemony undertone and also kind of creaminess. So it's a smooth white flower fragrance, you know, accentuated with the pink pepper. And of course, as I said, there's rose here, there's tonka, and ambroxan to kind of extend the life of the fragrance, to add some muskiness, and to amber to the fragrance as well. COUER is beautiful. You know, it doesn't sound like I've mentioned any notes from raw gold. There's kind of like a DNA or a backbone that's in here that's kind of not mentioned, that to me kind of wears a bit like raw gold, but more fresh and floral, if that makes sense. It's beautiful fragrance. But another one that's really, really gorgeous, really my favorite fragrance from this house, going to the house of Parfums DUSITA, it's Fleur de LALITA, this one right here. Wonderful fragrance with an overdose bouquet of flowers, accentuated and contrasted with galbanum. There's bitterness here, greenness, really, really intensified along with all the flowers that are in here, like white lily, jasmine. There's exotic flowers. Of course, the galbanum, as I mentioned, there's magnolia here. There's Ylang-Ylang. And finally, there's ambrette along with ambergris. So ambrette is a great musky note. It's a kind of a vegetal note, and it kind of complements the galbanum to create a bit more musky vegetal bitterness here, contrasted with the sweetness of the flowers in here. It's fantastic. All-time favorite fragrance. I really love this one. In fact, I had a small bottle of it. I took it with me on the trip recently and wore it because I really love the way it smells, and it totally reminds me of spring. So Fleur de LALITA, wonderful fragrance from the house of Parfums DUSITA. Definitely check that out if you haven't yet. This fragrance might be a bit tough to get, but it's one of my favorite fragrances from XERJOFF, and it's actually all flowers, and it's also very substantial for floral fragrance, so I think you can wear this in the summertime as well. But to me, it has notes in here that remind me of spring anyway. Like mimosa flower is pretty prominent here. Mimosa, you know, grows or kind of blooms in the spring, and you can totally see them on trees. It's all yellow and they look like little pom-poms, very, very tiny little pom-poms. Really beautiful smell. In fragrances, they smell kind of lightly almondy but powdery, and that's what is the highlight note here in Save Me from the house of XERJOFF. It's chamomile with mimosa, sandalwood, ylang-ylang, tuberose, gardenia, pink pepper, cyclamen, musk, and jasmine. What a wonderful fragrance. To me, in the heat, it comes alive, and I love that about it. But again, it's also perfect for summertime, but you know, maybe save this one for the warm spring days. Did I say summertime? Save it for the warm spring days, as I said. So Save Me from the house of XERJOFF, a wonderful fragrance. Then moving on to the house of Jeroboam, this is Boha, this one right here. Jeroboam fragrances are a collection of fragrances that do have a muskiness about them, and then they also have a fragrance called Origino, where you can use that as a base and spray the other fragrances on, if that makes sense. If you guys know that, you can wear Origino on its own, but you can also intensify it with you know, with another fragrance. But for me, all the fragrances are extrait de parfum, so very, very concentrated, high concentration. This is a white floral fragrance anyway, so it's not like uber intense like some of their other more intense fragrances, but it's a beautiful white floral fragrance, really wonderful. It's featuring notes of white flowers. There's musk, there's violet leaves, there's powdery notes. So violet leaves creates a kind of a wet, dewy wateriness, ozonic touches here with this note, and it creates a kind of a powdery effect as well. More of a bit of a violet touch, but less of the violet flower, more about the leaves, where it creates this kind of like ozonic freshness here. So it's a very, very fresh fragrance, and with all the white flowers in here, kind of non-distinct white flowers. You know, you probably have something like jasmine in here, could be other white flowers in here, something like gardenia, maybe tuberose, and maybe even magnolia, but it's a bouquet of white flowers, really beautiful. So Boha is a great fragrance from this house. And what I like about the Jeroboam fragrances, they're small bottles. They're easy to carry around and drop it into your bag or purse or something, and then when you're needing a bit of spritzing, you can just pull it out and spritz away. And that's what I like about them, because also they're also highly concentrated fragrances. They're extrait de parfums, so it makes them, you know, last longer, and also smaller bottles to not weigh you down, kind of a thing. And then moving on to the house of Le Galion, this is Tilleul. I think that's how you say it. It's a really tough French word. Basically stands for linden blossom or lime blossom in some different cultures. And this is a fantastic fragrance highlighting this note. Really an amazing note. In fact, if you've ever walked into a little garden of linden blossom trees, and that smell around June or May or July or whenever they're like in full bloom is so intoxicating. I've had the experience, and I was really intoxicated with that smell, and it really left a major impression on me, not really wanting to dig in to linden blossom or linden flower fragrances, which in this case is called Tilleul from Le Galion. So if you like this note, definitely check this one out. It features linden accord, honey, ambroxan, and musks, and this one's actually sweetened up with the honey, because to me, when you actually smell the linden blossom or the flower, there's definitely a honeyed undertone there. It has a honeyed effect, so basically they're boosting up the honeyed touches of the linden flower with the addition of honey. So it might come off a bit sweet here. It's a definitely honeyed floral fragrance, but they also thrown in the ambroxan, which is musky ambery, and then of course the musks to intensify the fragrance further. So beautiful fragrance, definitely a sweeter spring floral fragrance. It's Tilleul from the house of Le Galion. And then we've got Mali Insolite, recently featured in my Lila Noor fragrances video. This is a jasmine bomb. If you like jasmine fragrances, you've got to check this one out, but it's also kind of a mineral take on jasmine with some spiciness from pink pepper. And then they've also thrown in tuberose, and I think tuberose, jasmine work really beautifully together. This features jasmine sambac and also jasmine grandiflorum, so two types of jasmine to give you a jasmine bomb effect. But you know, the pink pepper comes in here and gives you this kind of spicy effect, but also a bit of a light incensey touch in there. For me, sometimes pepper, black pepper, pink pepper, takes on the characteristic of incense, so it kind of feels like you're smelling this incense note that's contrasted with all the white flowers. But really beautiful. It's minerally for sure, but very floral, very white. Perfect spring floral fragrance. So this is Mali Insolite from Lila Noor Fragrances. And then finally we've got the fragrance complement from the house of Maison Violet. Maison Violet creates fragrances with perfumer Nathalie Lorsan. If you don't know, this to me is a very fresh floral fragrance, but it's highlighting tuberose along with jasmine. It's all of these notes together, and they've thrown in orange blossom as well. These three flowers really work wonderfully together. You can throw them in together, they play wonderfully together, and then they create this beautiful white floral bomb. Of course, the orange blossom giving the white floral bomb some citrusy characteristics, because in the end it's the citrus flower, but they've also thrown in some Ylang-Ylang in here, some hawthorn, heliotrope, benzoin, and vanilla. So it's powdery fragrance. It's a powdery white floral, very spring-like, and then of course you know, you've got a bit of a light nutty almondy touch with that heliotrope in here, but a beautiful fragrance. Definitely you know, highlight for me from this house. Still, my favorite is you know, On Air d'Apogée, but this is definitely a great white floral fragrance to wear in the springtime. So compliment, and perhaps you might get some compliments with it, as it's called compliment. Finally, we're going to end the list with this fragrance from the house of Ex Nihilo. It's Vesper Glitz. Now this is a little more concentrated, a little more you know, with the depth kind of a fragrance, because it has vanilla contrasted with all the floral notes. And once again, we've got mimosa here, we've got neroli, vanilla, pink pepper, there's musk, there's tonka beans, we've got ylang-ylang, jasmine, cedar, mandarin. So there's a lot of things going on here. There's woods for sure, there's citruses for sure. All of these kind of round out the fragrance. Of course, we've got mimosa. It's powdery, lightly nutty. I mean, I would say it's got some light almond, fresh almondy qualities to mimosa, but not as almondy as the note of heliotrope for me. So if you like mimosa, it has a very kind of light, innocent kind of a smell to it, which I quite like. Here it's beautiful with all the other flowers, and of course you've got neroli here, the vanilla, and some spices of pink pepper. Really beautiful fragrance. This one I actually really fell in love with and decided to buy while I was in France. I really liked it. I was really curious about it when they first announced it, and I spoke about it in a upcoming fragrances video. Now I'm happy to have it. So Vesper Glitz from the house of Ex Nihilo, and that's the last spring floral fragrance for you guys. Again, as I said, that one's a bit more complex. It's got vanilla in it, so you know, wear it at your caution. I don't have any rules about wearing fragrances in different seasons. I do these videos because you guys are into the idea of, you know, figuring out specific kind of fragrances that are, you know, season appropriate. But for me, I'll wear that anytime. I'll wear it in the winter, I'll wear it in the summer. It smells fantastic because I like the way it smells. But either way, guys, let me know your thoughts on these fragrances, these 12 fragrances, spring floral fragrances. If you've tried them, let me know what you think about them. If you haven't, are you curious to try them? Put a comment down so I can find out. Lastly, if you have another favorite spring floral fragrance, let me know what it is. Put a comment down so I can find out. Either way, guys, thanks so much for watching today's video. If you have any questions or comments, please list below. Please like this video, please share it, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and I'll be back with more videos very soon. Have a good one. Goodbye. So I've got a bonus fragrance for you guys, and it's a brand new one from the house of Juliette Has a Gun. This is Lust for Sun. This was another fragrance I was excited about from this house. Finally, going back to what they launched in 2019, Vanilla Vibes, I think this one is just as good. Maybe not as good, but almost as good as Vanilla Vibes. Lust for Sun is a beautiful kind of floral beachy fragrance. Lots of flowers here, very, very floral. So imagine it's a beach next to like a floral garden, like a lush floral garden, if that makes sense. It's got lots of gardenia here with bergamot. There's ylang-ylang. Of course, there's coconut in here. There's freesia. There's manoi. Manoi is tiare flower. And then there's orange blossom, ambroxan, white musk, and vanilla. So it definitely has a beachy vibe, but it's more of a floral take on a beachy vibe. They always throw in ambroxan or cetylox in their fragrances to kind of boost and make the fragrance, you know, stronger and last longer and things like that. But I think this is definitely a solid fragrance from this house. Definitely after after they, you know, they dropped the vanilla vibes in 2019, everything was good. Some were not as good as the others, but I think this one's really, really a solid release for the lovers of floral fragrances. And again, it's Lust for Sun from the house of Juliet Has a Gun. If you've tried it, let me know. If you haven't, are you curious? Do let me know as well. Have a good one. Bye-bye.